3 years later, I stood at the window of our new top-floor office, watching the Chicago skyline stretch beneath the sunset. This city, once the place I arrived with nothing but a suitcase, was now where Ryan and I had built a thriving financial empire, Reynolds and Carter Capital. The investment firm we founded had become a leader in funding sustainable businesses. We helped small companies find the capital to grow, backed clean energy projects, and proved that profitability didn't have to come at the cost of sustainability. Everything happened faster than I expected. We started with a tiny office and a handful of employees, but after the first year, Ryan's reputation and sharp investment choices drove steady growth. I took on the role of COO, building out strong operational systems, while Ryan focused on strategy and partnership expansion. We were the perfect team, not just in business, but in life. My life had completely transformed. I was no longer the girl frozen in front of a kitchen door, listening to her mother tear her down in a calm voice. I was no longer a confused young woman in a strange city, struggling to find a job just to get by. I was Julia Carter, and I was proud of who I had become. That evening, Ryan and I sat on the couch in our apartment, wine glasses in hand, unwinding after a long day. The company had achieved incredible success, and I couldn't believe that just 3 years earlier we were working out of a cramped little office. Ryan set his glass down and looked at me with thoughtful eyes. "Julia," he began, "I want to talk to you about a deal." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of deal?" He paused, then pulled a folder from the glass table and slid it toward me. I opened it and my eyes quickly scanned the printed lines. I recognized the name immediately, Sterling and Dawson Capital. My hand froze. My heart pounded. It was the firm Rachel and William had started together after betraying me. They had found quick success, leveraging Rachel's industry reputation and their combined connections. But from what I was reading now, things had taken a turn. Sterling and Dawson was on the edge of collapse. Ryan continued, watching me closely. "Their firm is drowning in debt. High-risk investments didn't pay off like they expected, and they're scrambling to stay afloat. Investors are losing confidence." He paused, then added the most important part. "They're looking for a partner to bail them out." I looked up at Ryan, narrowing my eyes slightly. "You're saying they want to sell the company?" He nodded. "And I want us to buy it." The air grew heavy. I closed the folder, trying to steady myself. "Why?" I asked, my voice dropping low. "Ryan, you know what they did to me. Why would you want to do this?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, eyes still fixed on me. "Because it's a good deal, Julia. Their firm has a few promising clients and some unfinished projects that could turn profitable with the right management. We can restructure it to align with our values." I stayed silent, my fingers tightening around the wine glass. 3 years ago, Rachel and William thought they had won. They took the man I loved, crushed my dignity, and used their status to build their success. And now they were standing at the edge of failure while I was the one holding their future in my hands. "Julia," Ryan said gently, as if reading my thoughts, "I'm not suggesting this as revenge. I want you to see it as a business opportunity. You'd have the power to lead it the way you want." I took a deep breath, then slowly set my glass down. "All right," I said, my voice calmer than I expected. "But I have one condition." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "What condition?" I leaned forward, eyes steady. "If we acquire Sterling and Dawson, I want to run it directly. I'll be the one to decide who stays, who goes, and how the company is operated." Ryan smiled, a proud, approving smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less." I sat up straight, a strange calm washing over me. This wasn't revenge, this was control, this was agency. 3 years ago, they thought I wasn't strong enough to move on. Now they were about to face a new reality. Not only had I moved on, I'd come farther than they ever imagined. 3 months later, the Reynolds and Carter Capital Gala was held at a luxury hotel in downtown Chicago, marking a major milestone in the company's growth. It wasn't just an anniversary event, it was a statement. We had officially completed the acquisition of Sterling and Dawson Capital. The company Rachel and William once proudly built was now under my control. After a full restructuring, I had let go of most of the old staff, kept a few talented individuals, and reshaped the company based on the new values I believed in. And tonight, everyone who mattered in the finance industry was in attendance, including Rachel, William, and my mother. Ryan knew I had gone back and forth about whether to invite them. When I finally made my decision, he simply nodded. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I want them to see who I am now," I replied. The party unfolded in a dazzling space with crystal lights reflecting off elegant gowns and tailored suits. I wore a sapphire blue gown, sleek and tasteful, nothing too flashy, and my hair was softly curled and loose. Ryan, as always, looked impeccable in a classic black tuxedo. As the room filled with guests, I played the perfect host, greeting, shaking hands, discussing our company's new direction. But the moment Rachel and William walked in, I knew they had seen me. Rachel looked different from the last time I saw her. The confidence and power she once carried had faded, replaced by a trace of tension in her eyes. William looked tired, the dark circles under his eyes giving him away. They stood at the entrance, stunned as they took in the setting. And then my mother appeared. She wore an expensive dress, her face meticulously made up, her smile slightly strained as her eyes landed on me. As I calmly walked toward them, she was the first to speak. "Julia, you look stunning." I kept a polite smile, not cold, but not exactly warm either. "Thank you, Mom. So do you." Rachel looked me up and down, her expression showing clear discomfort. "I'll admit, I didn't think you'd make it this far," she said, trying to sound composed. I took a sip of champagne, smiling. Not everyone gets the chance to prove themselves after being stepped on. William said nothing, just watched me silently, as if trying to figure out who I had become. Ryan approached, resting a hand gently on my back, a quiet signal that I wasn't standing alone anymore. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his tone calm but firm. "Hope you're enjoying the party." Rachel pressed her lips together, glancing at Ryan, then back at me. "So this is why you succeeded." I let out a soft laugh. "You think I needed a man to get here?" I tilted my head. "You're mistaken. Ryan and I are partners. We built Reynolds and Carter Capital together, brick by brick." My mother cut in, grabbing my hand dramatically. "Julia, I know things in the past hurt you, but I always believed you could do something great." I looked at her, eyes calm. "You never believed in me. You only believed in what you wanted me to become." She blinked, as if about to say something, then stayed silent. I realized in that moment she wasn't here to mend anything. She was here to reconnect because I had finally made it. Rachel crossed her arms, her tone tinged with sarcasm. "Anyway, this company used to be mine and William's. You must be pretty satisfied sitting in our old seats." I shrugged. "Not really. I didn't buy the company to get revenge. I did it because it was a smart deal. It's just a shame. It could have been something much bigger if the people running it weren't so arrogant." Rachel's face went pale. William looked down at his drink, silent. I didn't feel victorious. There was no thrill or satisfaction in seeing them like this, only relief. If they hadn't betrayed me, I wouldn't be standing here today. If my mother hadn't dismissed me as useless, I'd never have had the drive to prove her wrong. I didn't need their approval anymore. "I wish you and William the best," I said, offering a soft smile. "I hope you both find what truly matters to you." With that, I turned away, leaving them standing in the middle of the glittering ballroom. Ryan looked at me, his eyes gentle. "You okay?" I took a deep breath, then smiled. More than ever. Tonight wasn't about revenge. Tonight was about owning who I was. The gala ended around midnight, as the last guests departed with warm congratulations and firm handshakes. I stood on the rooftop of the hotel, the cool breeze brushing past me, my eyes taking in the glowing lights of Chicago below. Ryan stepped beside me, handing me a glass of wine. "Come on, you deserve a moment to enjoy this." I smiled, taking the glass. I used to think that when this day came, I'd feel victorious, that I'd feel satisfied seeing Rachel and William fall. Ryan didn't say anything. He just tilted his head, listening. I took a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill my lungs. But I don't feel that way. I turned to face him. There's no gloating, no satisfaction, just relief. Ryan smiled, gently placing a hand on my back. That's because you've come so much farther than they ever did, Julia. You don't need to prove anything anymore. I nodded and took a sip of wine. I no longer carried the weight of needing to prove to my mother that I wasn't a failure. I didn't need validation from Rachel or William. They had once been central figures in my life, but now they were simply part of the past. A past that had led me to this incredible present. Ryan took my hand, his fingers warm and steady. I have something for you. I raised an eyebrow, watching as he pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. My heart skipped. He opened the box to reveal a simple, stunning diamond ring. Julia, since the day you came into my life, everything changed. You're not just my business partner, you're the one who made me a better version of myself. I can't imagine this life without you. My breath caught as I looked into his blue eyes. There wasn't a trace of doubt in them. Ryan knelt down, right there under the starlit Chicago sky. Will you marry me? I let out a soft laugh, tears welling in my eyes. I used to think I didn't believe in love anymore. I glanced at the ring, then back at him. But then you came along, and you made me believe that love isn't about sacrifice or loss. It's about partnership and mutual respect. Ryan gently squeezed my hand. So, will you partner with me for the rest of our lives? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I whispered, nodding. I will. He stood, sliding the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into a tight embrace. I closed my eyes, feeling his heartbeat and his warm breath in my hair. I was no longer the girl standing in that kitchen, crushed by a mother who told her she wasn't enough. I was no longer the woman betrayed and lost in a strange city. I was Julia Carter. I was the woman who rebuilt her life from the ruins, and I had truly made it. 1 year later, springtime in Chicago was beautiful. I sat in my office, watching the trees slowly turn green again, thinking about everything that had happened over the past 4 years. Ryan and I had gotten married in an intimate ceremony by Lake Michigan, surrounded only by our closest friends and chosen family, the people who had supported us every step of the way. Reynolds and Carter Capital continued to thrive, expanding into new areas. But for me, success wasn't just about money or recognition anymore. Success was waking up each morning knowing I was doing what I loved, with the person I loved by my side. Success was no longer being haunted by the past, no longer letting old wounds define who I was. Success was being able to look in the mirror and say, I'm truly happy. Ryan walked into the room with a soft smile. Ready for lunch, Mrs. Carter? I laughed and stood up. Never been more ready. He wrapped his arm around my waist and together we walked out, stepping into the rhythm of a city I once called unfamiliar. But now it was home. The past was behind me and I was finally free. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes the pain and betrayal we experience push us beyond our limits and help us grow. Julia once thought she needed her family's approval, but in the end, she realized her true worth came from within. Her story isn't one of revenge, but of growth, love, and building a life to be proud of. Sometimes, the best thing we can do is let go of the past and move forward. What do you think about Julia's journey? If you were in her shoes, how would you face your past? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about life, family, and powerful lessons worth remembering. I stood frozen in front of the kitchen door, every word from my mother slicing through me like invisible blades. Julie is not right for you. You deserve someone better, my mother Evelyn said calmly, as if she were discussing the weather. You know Rachel has always been ambitious, a strong woman. She's not a dreamer like Julia. My hands clenched into fists without me realizing. On the other side of the door, my boyfriend William, who had been with me for the past 3 years, said nothing. No denial, no awkward chuckle to lighten the mood, just silence, then a sigh. Julia and I have been together for a long time, William said, his voice trailing off like even he wasn't sure anymore. My mother let out a soft laugh, a sound that weighed heavily on my chest. But think about it. What have you accomplished in the last 3 years? Rachel, on the other hand, just got promoted to department head. Don't you see the difference? Rachel, my sister, the family's golden child, the one my mother never stopped comparing me to. I had known since I was little that, in her eyes, I was just a faint shadow next to Rachel. I chose to pursue art, something my mother always saw as meaningless. To her, I was just someone chasing fanciful dreams with no real future. I leaned closer, peeking through the crack in the door. William was still holding the 2 sodas I had asked him to bring for us, but now he seemed to have forgotten I was waiting. He was listening to my mother, no objections, no defense. Instead, he nodded slowly. I saw his eyes shift from hesitant to thoughtful. A deep ache spread through my chest, making it hard to stay on my feet. I wanted to rush in, to scream, to ask William why he was letting her words get to him. But I didn't. I turned away, trying to steady my steps. That whole evening, I smiled and acted like nothing had happened. That was my first mistake. The changes didn't come all at once, but they were subtle enough for me to notice. William started bringing up Rachel in our conversations. Things like, Rachel had an important meeting today, or did you hear Rachel just got nominated for an award at work, became common. At first, I thought he was just trying to get closer to my family, but slowly I began to notice the look in his eyes when he talked about my sister, respect, admiration. Then came the cancelled dates, more and more of them. His apologies still sounded sincere, but something felt off. When I asked him about the texts between him and Rachel, the ones I hadn't heard about before, he just smiled. We just ran into each other in the city, William said casually. She's your family, Julia. Are we not allowed to talk? I stayed quiet, convincing myself I was overthinking, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being left out. Whenever we had dinner with my family, William and Rachel shared something, an invisible bond I couldn't reach. The way they looked at each other, the subtle smiles only they seemed to understand. I felt like a stranger in my own relationship. And then, one day, the truth hit me in the worst way. That day, I decided to surprise William. We used to dream about going to a concert by his favourite band, and I finally got the tickets. I wanted to see the joy in his eyes again, to remember what it felt like when we were happy. I still had the key to his apartment. We had planned to move in together next year. When I opened the door, I immediately knew something was wrong. A familiar beige coat hanging by the hook, a pair of high heels I never wore sitting by the bed. And then I heard laughter. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, but what I saw inside was unmistakable. Rachel was leaning into William, her eyes shining with satisfaction. When I dropped the tickets onto the floor, they finally noticed I was there. I saw panic in William's eyes. But Rachel was different. She wasn't flustered. She didn't even bother hiding it. Julia, she said, her voice calm and cold, you were going to find out sooner or later. I stood there, feeling something inside me shatter, but I didn't cry. No, I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I tightened my fists and turned away. The anger would come later, but right then, all I felt was emptiness. I stood in my mother's spotless kitchen, facing her, searching for a trace of remorse in her eyes. But all I saw was a cold indifference. You're overreacting, Julia, my mother said, her voice so calm it gave me chills. She stirred her cup of Earl Grey tea gently, as if this conversation was nothing of importance. Relationships end all the time. You can't cling to something like that forever. It felt like someone had slapped me in the face. Really? You're talking about my 3-year relationship like it's worth nothing? My voice trembled with anger, but my mother just sighed and set her tea down. You've always been a dreamer, Julia. she said, giving me that judgmental look. You're not practical. You have no clear goals. Rachel and William are different. They have ambition, direction. Who can you blame but yourself? I blinked, trying to stay composed. For the first time in my life, I looked at my mother not as the woman who gave birth to me, but as a stranger, someone who had never truly seen me as her daughter. I think I understand now, I said, my voice dry. You never really believed in me, did you? She didn't deny it. I turned and walked out of the house, and I wasn't going back. I left Philadelphia just 1 week later. My old car was packed with suitcases and cardboard boxes, the remnants of 3 years with William, of a childhood spent trying to win my mother's approval, of all the memories I wished I could forget. My destination, Chicago. No solid plan, no job waiting, just a modest savings account from part-time jobs and a burning desire to start over. It was raining when I arrived. Streetlights reflected in the puddles like glittering mirrors, and towering buildings loomed above me like silent giants. I found a cheap motel in a run-down part of town, where the tiny rooms smelled musty and the curtains were faded. But at least it was mine. No more William, no more Mom, no more Rachel. Just me and the life ahead. Those first days were anything but easy. I sent out job applications everywhere, from coffee shops to administrative assistant positions. But art wasn't exactly a lucrative field, and my experience didn't help much when trying to break into something entirely different. My savings kept dwindling, and I began to worry. I took a job as a waitress at a small cafe, spending long days on my feet with aching legs. But at least I had enough money to get by. I still remember the first time I stepped into the office building that would change my future forever. It was day 33 in Chicago. I had just enough money to pay rent for 1 more month, and I knew I needed a better job. By chance, while handing out flyers for the cafe, I overheard a group talking about an open position at a financial investment firm. No experience needed, just organizational skills and the ability to handle pressure. I quickly jotted down the address. The next day, I walked into the sleek glass building with a resume in hand. The receptionist gave me a once-over, from my discount store business dress to the worn-out purse I clutched tightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "I heard there's an opening for an administrative assistant," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She picked up the phone, had a short exchange, then looked back at me. "Please wait over there." I sat down, my palms damp with sweat. This was the first real opportunity I'd had. I couldn't let it slip away. 30 minutes later, a woman with neatly tied brown hair stepped out. "I'm Carol, head of HR," she said, shaking my hand. "Julia, right? I just reviewed your application. We're looking for an assistant for one of our young financial analysts, but it's a high-pressure role." "I'm not afraid of a challenge," I said immediately. She studied me carefully. Why would someone with an arts background want to work in this field? I took a deep breath and answered as honestly as I could. Because sometimes to start over, you have to step out of your comfort zone and try something completely new. She was silent for a moment, then nodded. "All right, come with me. I'll introduce you to the person you'd be working with if you're selected." I followed her down a long hallway into an office flooded with paperwork and cold LED lighting. The man sitting at the desk looked up as we entered. "Julia, this is Ryan Carter," Carol introduced. "He's the one you'll be assisting if you get the job." Ryan reached out to shake my hand. "Welcome to the world of finance, Julia." I took his hand, feeling as though a new door had just opened in front of me. I had left the past behind, and now I was ready to write the next chapter of my life. Working at Carter and Associates wasn't easy, but I had never felt more like I belonged anywhere. Ryan Carter was the kind of boss people both respected and feared. He worked at a relentless pace, setting high standards for himself and everyone around him. In the early days of being his assistant, I made plenty of mistakes, forgetting to attach files to emails, scheduling meetings at the wrong times, even spilling coffee on his desk. But instead of getting angry, Ryan just looked at me, lifted the stack of papers, and sighed. Julia, if you're planning to stick around, at least try to spill coffee on the less important documents, he said dryly, but not unkindly. I blushed. I'll do my best. And I really did. After a few weeks, I started to catch the rhythm of the job. I learned to anticipate Ryan's needs before he said a word, organised his schedule to maximise efficiency, and, most importantly, I began to understand how he thought. He wasn't just a talented financial investor, he was a visionary. Our quick lunches became opportunities for me to learn from him. Why did you invest in that company instead of a bigger one? I asked as he reviewed a funding deal for a clean energy startup. Ryan raised an eyebrow and set down his coffee. Because they have passion. I don't just invest in ideas, I invest in people. For the first time, I realised the world of finance wasn't just about cold numbers. It was about seeing potential, evaluating character, and believing in the right things. Over time, our relationship slowly moved beyond the confines of work. Late nights at the office turned into deep conversations about life. I told him about Philadelphia, my mother, Rachel, and William. Ryan didn't pity me, and he didn't offer empty reassurances, he just listened, nodding now and then. Maybe you had to leave them behind to find yourself, he said one late night as we shared takeout over his desk. I didn't reply, but his words stayed with me all night. One evening, when work had finally slowed down, we sat together on the rooftop of the office building, watching the lights of Chicago flicker below. Why did you choose this field? I asked. Ryan leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. My dad owned a small business, but he never had the right financial support. In the end, it went under, and I watched my family lose everything. He gave a faint smile. I wanted to create a place where small businesses could find the kind of help my dad never had. I sat there quietly. Maybe deep down we weren't so different. In the days that followed, I noticed the way Ryan looked at me had changed. It wasn't the analytical gaze of a boss toward his assistant anymore. It was something warmer, more personal. And then, on a Friday night, after a long week of tense investment meetings, he said, "Want to grab dinner?" I blinked. "You mean as boss and assistant?" Ryan gave a soft smile. As Ryan and Julia. That dinner had nothing to do with work. We talked about music, our favourite movies, and all the simple things we'd never had time to mention before. And when Ryan walked me all the way to my apartment door, I knew everything had changed. What we had wasn't some blazing fire from the start. It was a slow, steady warmth, like a comforting flame in the middle of a cold winter. No, but just when I thought I'd finally found where I belonged, Ryan made a proposal that shook me. "I'm leaving the company," he said during a late meeting. I froze. "What?" "I want to start my own investment firm, a place where we can support sustainable businesses with real value, but I don't want to do it alone." I swallowed hard. "What are you saying?" Ryan looked at me, eyes steady. "I want you to come with me." In that moment, I knew my life was standing at another crossroads. I could stay here, keep a stable job, or I could take a leap all over again, this time not to escape the past, but to build the future I truly wanted. I looked him straight in the eye. "Then where do we start?"